Welcome, everyone, to this month's seminar on spirituality and health. And we have the great pleasure and distinction of being able to have uh, Dr. John Edgar Caterson, who is the founder and executive subject matter expert of the American Strength Center, give his presentation today, which is The Architect's Blueprint for Human Potential. Let me just tell you a little bit about JE, as likes to be called. He's the founder and executive subject matter expert of the American Strength Center, a premier training company for leaders and military professionals specializing in spiritual core development, with current concentration on its nonprofit Reignite Heroes. This initiative focuses on raising awareness and bringing understanding to the invisible struggles that military service members, veterans, and their families have to deal with. Dr. Caterson also serves as faculty member at the Joint Special Operations University, College of Special Operations in the Department of Applied Special Operations Facility Arts, and the Joint SOF Leadership and SOF Professional Ethic at the United States Special Operations Command in MacDill Air Force Base in Florida. He is the U.S. SOCOM, SOCH, ESME, and Program Director of the Special Operations Chaplains Advanced Course Program. Currently, Dr. Caterson is collaborating with me, Dr. Harold Koenig, on Warfighter Spiritual Readiness, Moral Injury and Ethical Advisement T4T program for the Department of the Air Force Chaplain Corps. So with that introduction, I'd like you to welcome JE, and Dr. Caterson, take it away.
It's great to be here today and see some old friends that are on there. Again, a quick shout out to Glenn Schiraldi. We just were using your wonderful stuff the beginning of last month in our Special Operation Forces Chaplaincy crisis care and counseling class with an emphasis on spiritual readiness and resiliency. Where we had not only Special Force chaplains, but we had psychs from the different soft components that were part of the advanced doctoral class. So it's great seeing all y'all today. I know that your time is valuable, and at least on the East Coast, we're over a lunchtime. And what I wanted to do, having the conversation with Dr. Koenig, about the way that this works every month is to give you kind of like an inside peek, at least on the way that we approach working with the military and military families in the area of spiritual core development, and coupled with the stuff that we use with strengths. And so I'm going to share the slide deck that, of course, I just threw in the work that Dr. Koenig and I are doing, as well as the stuff that American Strength Center has put together, and the training workbook, Strengthening Your Spiritual Core, and threw it in and said, all right, let's see what kind of slide deck it puts together. And it at least gives us a template for stuff to kind of to look at. So I'm going to actually see if I can't share my screen with you, and we're see if we can't go from there. So you've already heard the little pitch, but the big part is military resiliency, readiness, and performance optimization. And we're talking about a big shift, whether it's in management, whether it's in leadership, whether it's in the command. You're looking at how do you shift from looking at everything from a deficit-based something to a strength-based approach in leadership. And so the paradigm shift that we're calling for is moving from how do we fix it to how can we build. And so many of you are familiar with CliftonStrengths. It started out with Strength Finders. I got in very early on because one of my panel of expert for my doctoral work was George Gallup Jr. And so he sent me a kind of like a 2-page brief on the stuff that his good buddy Donald Clifton was doing back in the middle, and then towards the end of the 90s, it said, "Hey, listen, I want you to kind of look at they're moving towards strength methodology." And it didn't happen in a vacuum. They had been studying at that point for a couple of decades. We're now 5 decades into it, but looking at traditional psychology and leadership focus, for years, not now, but for years, to studying what is wrong with people, instead of asking a more powerful question: what would happen if we studied what was right? And so, the kind of the old way was really a depreciative frame, focus on deficits and weaknesses. What's broken, weakness remediation, basically, which is the key questions: what's wrong? How did we get here? How bad is it? How can we fix it? We see that in all industries, but specifically in the military. Now, that's not to saying if there's certain things you can't do within the military or within a military family. I mean, you have to balance your checkbook, and you have to be able to go in formation and those type of things. We have to make sure that they're just things that we do, but it's a matter of where we're going to foot stomp or put our emphasis. So the new way is really a depreciative frame, which is focusing on natural talents and optimization. And the key questions that we ask are, what do we really want? What is really working? What has been the best of us? And how does excellence look like? So the core of the strength movement, and I believe that probably everybody on the call at least is very familiar with the strength movement that CliftonStrengths has done. But what's wrong, not fixing what's right, not fixing what's wrong. And then what we're tasked to do almost 2 decades ago at the American Strength Center with our relationship with Gallup and CliftonStrengths division was in the military. Everything's like a 3-letter. Your PCS. Anyone know what that is? Permanent change of station. TDY, temporary duty. There's all these things, and so to be able to get the wonder of looking at our inner core, our spiritual core, and because we believe that's the game changer. So I'm giving you a little preview to that right here. But to get at that, we needed to put it in terms that they would understand. I mean, when a war fighter jumps out of a plane and the parachute doesn't open, there's 3 things that you do: 1, 2, 3. So you can get that thing untangled and land safely. What we developed was something called an ABC agenda for high functioning leaders and families, how to help them in the transformation of their identity, their life, what the team requires, a rigorous step-by-step operational framework. And so we did an ABC. And so we took all the wonder and the complexity of CliftonStrengths and started thinking through those terms. So our A is assessing for talent, which is basically you're going to notice that all 3 are A, B, and C. They all have kind of like a D word that follows as far as the action, the focus. They all line together as well. So we assess for talent, which is we're helping people discover who they are, identify who they are, name the simple fact that they have significance and that they do matter. What we're talking about in our focus is the questions of meaning, belief. What is the path that they're on? Uncovering what CliftonStrengths has been designed to do. And many of you know it shouldn't probably have been called Strength Finders or CliftonStrengths at first. It probably would have been a great name would have been Talent Finder, because really what the uncovering of talent is the natural, innate, God-given, intrinsic way that you think, you feel, and you behave. And then, but it's not just enough to assess for talent, but how do you build it into strength? So basically, it's not just discovering, but it's developing, not just identifying, but you're taking ownership, not just naming, hey, this is what it is, but allow it to make a claim or a mark on your life. And so it's not just about meaning and belief in your pathway, but it's like, what do you value? Not just what you believe, but do you belong? People, it's actually their greatest satisfaction in life is going to be realizing from an inner core perspective, from a spiritual perspective, that we don't live this life alone. We don't do it in a vacuum. And so it's applying the friction of the investment to turn the raw potential into reliable performance. So assess for talent, building the strength, and then getting to what we've always hoped to get to, at least with the stuff that we're doing in the military, is how do you cultivate a spiritual core? So it's not just the discovering and the developing, but how do you deploy this now? Not just identifying and owning, but how can you focus this to not name and claim only, but actually how do you aim it that you're actually moving from significance to being fully satisfied? That we actually argue to truly be successful is to really understand the purpose that you've been created to do. And so empowering your leadership identity for long-term resilience. So the anatomy of the performance is how to deconstruct the strength, really, at least in strengthening your spiritual core, part of our strength-based leader program, and looking at CliftonStrengths is that to finish your strength, you need to start with your innate talent. So talent's kind of like that innate engine. Knowledge is really kind of like your formal, your education, and then skill is really your informal experience. And so you can read, but I'll put these up here just as an example that you see that really the definition of talent is that natural way of thinking, feeling, behaving, versus knowledge is what you know. It's the rules of the game. And then skill is really the basic ability to move through fundamental steps. And so as we look at a track sprinter is our illustration, and we train this out all the time within the military, whether it's soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, or Guardians, or actually from an enlisted NCO, non-commissioned officer, and senior enlisted, to those that have command as an officer, and even within the family, it's a great tool that we use. So we're talking about a track sprinter's example be the innate sense of timing, natural relaxation under pressure, inherent ability to focus on only one sound. When we tested some of the fastest runners in the world and asked them, how do you drown out 100,000 people in an Olympic stadium? Without exception, they all say, I hear one sound, bang, of the gun. And so basically, that's what talent is. Knowledge is actually the coaching piece of knowing the starting block placement, determined by the length of your leg, knowing how to lead with your dominant foot, versus the skill is practicing over and over again, smoothly moving in on your mark, get set, kind of stance and transitioning. So that kind of gives just an example of actually how we help on this moving from the A to the B. There's some invisible clues, though. What we always say at CliftonStrengths and Gallup, and specifically American Strength Center, if there was never a talent finder, a strength finder, a CliftonStrengths, right, we would realize that basically our greatest talents are hiding in plain sight, because they are natural to you. They often feel commonplace. They're almost invisible. The use of 5 experimental clues. And actually, some of our good friends that have dealt with this with parenting and children and family, looking at strength-based parenting, Mary, who was at the Family and Childhood Development Center out at Omaha at Gallup's university that's out that way, notice that basically these 5 clues can help parents understand, move their kids to discovering their talents, build them into strength, and then be able to move towards actually really their purpose or their inner core. Well, it's the same thing that we do at the military, and I challenge you in whatever the industry that we're in, these are great ones to use, because even if you had never, ever had this wonderful tool as CliftonStrengths, we start asking the questions, yearning. What kind of activities are you naturally drawn to? Rapid learning. What kind of things you just seem to pick up exceptionally quickly? Flow. It's like you're almost in the zone. In what activities do you seem to automatically know the exact steps to be taken? Glimpses of excellence. During what activities do you experience moments of subconscious brilliance and even think to yourself, oh my goodness, how did I do that? Right? It's like you got to pinch yourself and go, well, okay, there you have it. And then satisfaction is a biggie. right? Because what are the activities give you a kick after, during and after, and you start thinking, when do I get to do that again? I just can't wait to do it. And we're going to actually point to the fact that, again, significance is answering that question of who am I? Do I have meaning? Do I matter? But satisfaction is really moving to building your strength, and you don't do it in a vacuum. You don't ever do it in a vacuum. You do it in relationship, and that's going to be the satisfaction. When you get to do it again, we're going to notice it's not just by yourself, but with others. Now, those that understand the taxonomy of human potential from the 34 CliftonStrengths themes, as you noticed, they spent 30 years developing strength finders before Donald Clifton rolled it out. 30 years. That's quite remarkable. As we know, all the other tools that are psychometric tools that are out there, anything from Myers-Briggs to DISC, to insights to SDI, any of the tools that are out there that we use in the military and are very, very helpful. We do have to distinguish, or some descriptive versus prescriptive. But when we're looking at the CliftonStrengths, what they did was they spent 30 years before they rolled it out. And then, and the test case was a few million people, which is like staggering. When those of us that actually operate within the field of psychology of understanding, that's a pretty significant test number before they even rolled out now to discover your strength. But what they did then is they spent another decade, as many of you are familiar with, and they spent a decade looking at 10,000 teams and looking at 1,000 leaders. And then basically they noticed that the 34 themes are actually in 4 kind of leadership domains. So executors, they kind of make it happen. Influencing leadership domain, they take charge and speaking up. When you're looking at relationship building, they're kind of like the glue, right, that holds the team together. Strategic thinking, they absorb information and see what can be. So this is actually, for those that haven't done a deep dive, this is kind of the macro of those domains. So it's just really looking at strategic thinking would be kind of like the head, that kind of, versus the hearts, the hands are kind of another example. Now, the multiplier, and again, we're speaking military language, but you can apply this to any area of industry, or especially in the area of health would work well. But you're looking at the equation. Building talents into strength requires rigorous practice and hard work, exactly like building a physical strength. And so talent, natural way that you think, feel, and behave, right? And then you multiply that towards an investment. And what are you going to do? You're going to spend time practicing and developing your skills and building your knowledge base. Because we're going to notice, which we don't have time in our short presentation of the day, but there is a distinction between formal knowledge and informal knowledge. And the formal knowledge is really that coaching piece that we've already talked about, how long your legs are, the best place to put on the blocks, that stuff. But basically, your informal knowledge is kind of like your mojo. It's like, if you're watching sports, it's a person that gets loose and they recently in the World Cup, before a guy's taking a penalty kick, it's like he kind of spins the ball, puts it down, turns it around. He goes and he kind of takes a deep breathing, shakes his arms out. He probably says a little prayer to Hail Mary, says hi to his mom. Then gets focused and takes the shot. Versus, so it's not just a multiplication, but then when you do the investment, you equal, strength will come out. And this is the definition of really a strength. It is consistent, near perfect performance in a specific task. And so I love this example that a nurse who routinely administers injections so smoothly to patients that they don't feel a thing. Isn't it just skill? Well, they've multiplied their natural empathy and dexterity over years of deliberate investment. Why is this important? When you think of why did Clifton Gallup American Strength Center use the nursing as an example? Is because we know there are two things. Now, we're not talking war and those kind of larger than life type of things, but on just a day-to-day kind of basis, the things that people fear the most are dentists, and we also know from studying is getting injections or getting a shot. And so there's just something about when you're looking at, that was painless. That's from practicing and having empathy. The pipeline, though, is to understand that basically when you're looking at who you are, it is really looking at significance and success that will bridge the gap to help you work the work that you've been given. So you're looking at the raw input is like who you are. It's kind of like the state is like your being, your soul, your potential. Or a metaphor would be like a crude oil or the seed. The result would be I'm a unique person versus the friction of going through the process. You're moving from raw input to refined inputs. It's like who you are to the work you've been giving. So it's not just your being, but what you're going to be doing, not just your soul, but what is the role, not the potential, but the performance. And so when you're looking at it's not crude oil necessarily, we move to refined oil, not just the seed, but now we move to the fruit. And so basically the result is I'm a unique person with satisfaction. But then the result will be when you've gone all through the process is that this is my best contribution or success. It's really what is your purpose that you've been created to do. Here's some other important principles. When you start thinking about these themes and talents, is to understand that themes are neutral. There's not a single theme that says this one's good and that one's bad. They're tools that their value depends on how they're aimed, and that is really crucial. Themes are not labels. We don't go around and say, "Hey, I'm strategic. I'm activator. I have analytical." No. What we end up doing is you go through and realize that they're neutral, and it helps us avoiding putting unnecessary work or put people into a box. We lead with positive intent, and here's the thing: what we kind of gave it a preview before. We don't do this in a vacuum. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is to say that we understand that everyone on our team actually really is important and not to obstruct. And that's why differences are advantages. A team of identical profiles is a vulnerable team. Friction between talents creates kind of the comprehensive capacity. And what we're actually getting at is the fact that people need one another. And right, so no individual has every theme. Ultimately, readiness requires independent reliance and diverse of talent. And so that moves us back to looking at those 4 tactical domains again, that there's no definitive list of characteristics to describe all great leaders. True leadership is finding the right person for the right role based on their dominant themes. And so when we start going back and taking another look, because when you get your CliftonStrengths report started back at January 2025, after another 10 years prior to that of looking at these leadership domains, they said, okay, so now let's make this a little bit more practical. So when you get your CliftonStrengths, if you get your top 5 report, if you get your full 34, what it's going to actually do is actually you will be see that you fall naturally into one of these leadership domains. And so if you come out as an executing type leader or person, you're really process oriented. Basically, in the day, your operational focus is the task and the present. It's really kind of like the hands and feet. All right. And the team impact is that makes things happen. You prevent turnover and safety incidents, ensuring everybody knows what is expected. That's what an executing leader does. They get her done and they help the team get it done. Versus an impact oriented leader, they're about influencing, and they're really looking at the task, but also the future. They sell ideas inside and outside of the team. They connect people to the mission and their purpose, inspiring them to believe that there's something bigger. And then there's the relationship building. They're really in the leadership domain. It's got the blue color, and they actually look at people in the present. They're really kind of like the heart, right, of a team. And so they're the team blue. They ensure that team members feel cared for. They're drastically improving and engaging and lowering absenteeism. Then there's the strategic leader. They're thought oriented. They're people, but they're also the future. So they're really kind of the mind of looking at what's going on there. And so they keep the team focused. They absorb information, help them absorb all the things that need to get done, and help them to be able to play that out strategically. And so when we apply all this stuff, this is really the A and a lot on the B. But how does this look at the spiritual core? Because if we understand that even groups of people that come together, it kind of gets us to the last slide before I talk a little bit about spiritual core more in depth, is the fact that Donald Clifton, towards the end of his life, he basically said that ultimately team readiness is not achieved by attempting to fix everyone individual's weaknesses. It is engineered by ruthlessly identifying, investing in, and deploying highly specific strengths. And so I'm just going to let you read that for a second. That little phrase that Donald Clifton said. I think it's so powerful at the end. I certainly don't want you to miss it. So just read it for just a second. I noticed that, notebook LM, right? It just highlights. You put in your inputs and it does what it does. A lot of times, if you're not careful, all of a sudden, wrong information. So you got to go back and you work with it. But at the end of the day, you notice strengths: carpenter, tools, physician. Right. So here it is. A leader needs to know his strength as a carpenter knows his tools. And it actually in the original quote, it goes and says, as a physician knows the instruments at her disposal. What great leaders have in common is that each truly knows his or her strengths and can call on the right strength at the right time. So you have to assess your talent, build on the strength, and then cultivate your spiritual core. And so that's basically the slide deck that you have available to you. I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what some of the tools are. But we wanted to show you at least we're constantly experimenting with the tools that we're using. But one of the things that we have, and I'll hold it up, is called and you can look at American Strength Center website, but it's called Strength to Your Spiritual Core. It's one of our workbook. Looks a little bit different than that slide deck that I just gave you. But what I don't want you to miss is the fact that it'd be worth you doing a little look around at it, because what we do is in our A, B, and C, our big C section on cultivating the spiritual core. Remember, it's not just discovering and developing, but it's like, how do you deploy? It's not just at the end of the day is what is the path that you're on and who are your people, but what is the purpose that you're called to do? And from an inner core spiritual perspective, a lot of stuff that we do, we start off by saying, what's important? The importance of spirits and soul. And so I'm going to read this to you. I didn't put it up on the slide intentionally, but again, General George Marshall during the Second World War, he went and said this, that a warrior's heart, a warrior's spirit, a warrior's soul are everything. Unless a warrior's soul sustains them, they cannot be relied on, and they will fail themselves and their commander and their country in the end. It's like I adapted it to 2026, 2027 language. But at the end of the day, a lot of the people that we worked with, and you're familiar with Dr. Lisa Miller. She's just a remarkable human being up there in Colombia. But basically looking at the development of the spiritual core. And when you develop that spiritual core, you're looking at not just resistance, but you're looking at readiness. And you're talking about that people that actually have this development, their spiritual core developed. And we use CliftonStrengths as a way to actually move them along and strengthen your spiritual core. We also have something called Strong Core Leader, where we use SDI, Strength Deployment and Inventory from Core Strengths, is the other assessment tool that we use. They're the only two that we use with the military. But basically, we use those, and the preventative factors are this, right? 80% less likely for substance abuse, 70% less likely to take risks such as driving fast, jumping high places, or having unwanted relationships, 60% less likely to experience major depression, and 50 to 80% less likely to consider suicide. Suicide's in real time for me. I mean, this morning I had a call from a battle buddy, a trusted friend, and we were going to meet tomorrow morning, but we're going to meet on Thursday because a good friend of his, their son just 20 years old, committed suicide yesterday. And so, this is serious business. And so we take very seriously to say, what would it look like on the front end? What would it look like on the front end from a preventative standpoint? I do. I shout out to Glenn Schiraldi. So much of the work that he did in the Resilient Warrior and in the PTSD handbook that deals with suicide and some of the stuff that's out there, we've kind of adapted and we're using with a great audacity. But really what we're talking about when we're talking about the development of the spiritual core, and I could put this up on a slide, but I thought this would be helpful because some of you're off camera, it's okay, but hopefully you can see. But basically we do one of these, like these arms, these V's that go up and down. So basically what we test out when we look at the spiritual fitness scale that we use, at least in the military, and we use the American Strength Center, is basically vertical spirituality. We're talking about personal connection to a higher power, transcendent, or even with audacity, we say God. Then we're talking about horizontal spirituality. What we're talking about is sacrifice of the greater good. At the end of the day, what does it look like? And as our spirituality has an impact on all our relationship, and then our internal spirituality is pursuing meaning, purpose, and value, and what that kind of looks like. And so what we do in cultivating the spiritual core is try to actually hit those, and we look at all the development tasks that are out there, whether it's work, relationships, places in the world, existential reality, good events, bad events. We look at all these developmental tasks, and then as Lisa's work brought to us, what does that look like without the spiritual core versus what does it look like with the spiritual core? And then there's another thing that you can look at, and you'd be able to look that up online, or if you want, there's if you reached out to us, we'd actually send it to you. But basically, as we're looking at the spiritual core, we kind of walk people through the why. What is your purpose in life? What your path? Where are you going? Who's your people, and what are your practices? And so we basically take them through what we call the 4 Ps. And everything that we do, back up to why did I give you that first slide deck? Because I know Vicky's looking at me going, I don't know why in the world you did that. But in the meantime, a bunch of you are probably thinking the same. It's because if you understand the ABC process, right, that we're the natural, intrinsic, right, God-given ways that you think, you feel, behave. And then you not only discover that, but then you develop that and build that into strength by more knowledge and more skills of practicing those things. When you get to cultivating your spiritual core, right, now you're going to be able to deploy it, and you're going to be able to make sense of actually, it's not just, I matter, I have significance. My satisfaction comes in doing this with a team and in relationships or a unit. But my ultimate success and purpose in life is that I'm not going to do it in a vacuum, but I'm going to continue to do it. And I'm going to journey together in community with other people. And so at the end of the day, that's part of the way that we do that. And so when we always come back to say, okay, now what is your leadership domain? Are you an executor? Are you an influencer? Are you relationship building? Your strategic thinking? I even know in my household, I have, we have all the colors, and the colors matter, by the way. They spend a lot of time, looking at colors. And so when you think of executing, you think of purple as the color they have for executing. Why would purple be that color? Right. I'm going to pause for a second. I know you have other questions too that are more important than this. In the meantime, why do you think? Can someone open up their mic or raise your hand and tell us why do you think in the world purple would be a color for executors? Anyone have a clue? Anyone would take a stab? Any? No one? Right?
I think it's associated with leadership and kingdom.
Yolanda, you're rocking it. That's it. Kingdom, kings that rule, whether it's a him or her, whether it's the queen or the king. At the end of the day, those who get it done, those who win the battle, they basically, right, that was actually how they got the rules. So purple is kind of like a royal color. And so executors, it's a reminder. It's like the reason that they get to do is because they're the way that it shakes itself out, their talents, their themes move into this. Their whole thing is like, How can I get it done? They have lists, lots of lists. Knock it off, get things done. So that's a great thing. Then we're I'll come back to influence in a second, because I always like that one because it's the hardest one to get. But blue, I could actually just write on my hand, and I do this a lot of times if I'm speaking. I remember I have a good friend of mine. I won't use his name because he would just I'd be healed and upside the head. But we would always write on our finger and just tell a crowd, what's that color, and then we would hold it up and say, okay, what's your favorite color? Well, watch this. Gallup has crunched the numbers, and you're looking at it. Way north of 80% of people on the planet will say blue is their favorite color. Well, why would they do that? It's the most common color on the planet, right? It's the sky, it's the ocean, it's water. It's right. So it basically is the one that. So blue is really it's that universal community, that color that's there. So, and I know there's 6 thinking hats, and there's all different colors, and I understand there's lots of tools that do it. But in the meantime, at face value, we say, okay, so blue is that color for people. Then you're looking at green. We used to have it as red at Clifton, but now we have it as green. But it's strategic thinking, right? Like it's kind of like a leadership color is that. But then the one that people can hardly ever get, and I relate this most to spiritual core, and it's maybe because I'm an influencing leader, but it's orange. And you go, what is that about? Anyone ever see the movie Michael? Right, John Travolta, right? He's like he's the angel that eats 4 buckets of sugar on his cereal. He smokes. He claims that he invented standing in line, right? And he's not that kind of angel. Does miracles, just little tiny ones. But in the meantime, he's got these big angel wings, and these reporters from Chicago, when they pick him up in the middle of the country, and they were driving to Chicago to do an interview and all that stuff. So he makes them drive because he won't fly, and it's because he's teaching these people all this stuff all along the way about their inner core, about their spiritual being, is what he's trying to teach them as Michael the angel. And they go to these different things. They see the largest world's frying pan. They see the biggest ball of yarn. He goes to all these different things, and why he's along their trip, there's a big bull that's there, and he says, battle. And he goes up, and he's going to get into a battle against this big bull, and he runs up, and they butt heads together, and we see the bull on the ground, and the reporter comes and goes, what are we doing, Michael? We just need to get you to Chicago, kind of thing. And he looks at him, and he says to him, the north wind, right, says the sun, you see that man down there? I bet you I can make him take off his coat before you do. And the son said, I'll take that. And what does Michael do? Michael goes and he puts out the story. And the north wind blows and blows and blows. And the more that it blew, the more the man held onto his coat. The son goes, my turn. The son comes and warms up the day. The man takes off his jacket, flips it over his shoulder, and walks away. And the reporter goes, what is that all about? And some of you were like, what's that all about? That's what influencing is. The influencing leadership domain is like the color of the sun. It's like orange. It's like it kind of operates kind of like under the radar, but is absolutely essential to make sure that everybody, right, is like that is heard in that kind of way. And so it's that kind of stuff that we do when we're helping people develop their spiritual core, is using CliftonStrengths, or in the other protocol that we use our SDI stuff, strengths deployment inventory stuff, which it's interesting because as you look at Donald Clifton, he was in the Second World War. He actually had the Army Cross. He was part of the Air Force, but the Air Force was in the Air Force during the Second World War. The Army had planes, and then it eventually became the Air Force. But in the meantime, Donald Clifton, when he came back from the Second World War, he was thinking, how in the world can we actually create kind of a new normal and help people move in? Well, at the same time, Ellis Porter is developing SDI, and so they both kind of got at the same type of thing: is what is that inner core, that spiritual core look at? But Donald Clifton said, I'm going to take it from a strength, from a talent perspective, that natural way you think, you feel, and behave. And when you look at SDI, strength deployment inventory, what they end up doing is just saying, I'm going to look at our MVS, or motivational value sequence, and your confidence sequence, that can actually, how that impacts what's going on, that people can't see. So both of them are getting at stuff that seems invisible, that's there, that's behind, but it is so absolutely essential. And so in both those things, we use an A, B, and C. So we assess for talent, we build in the strength, and then we cultivate the spiritual core. There's a lot more we could have done just with the spiritual core, but I knew that if I gave you kind of the background, that would get you that. So we're kind of at time. I know Doc is like, okay, they might have a question or two. You might not, and that's okay. So it was a lunch hour that I enjoyed spending with you in the meantime. And spiritual core is really important to me these days as much as it is at any time in my life. And part of the reason is Doc knows this. I think Dr. Schiraldi does as well. But, you know, my bride and I were training. We were in Japan in April, doing working with Navy in Tokyo. And we were there for 10 days. And my bride is the one who actually is the head of American Strength Center. She's the one who was her vision, all that. And I just happen to be kind of a person who loves educating and training and that kind of stuff. So kind of jumped on and helped do that. But we're there in Japan. And right before that, she didn't feel so good. And we tried to get an MRI and a mammogram, but the orders weren't written right. That's the way it goes sometimes in America. So we had to go to the trip, and we came back. As soon as we came back, I happened to be at a military installation when she gave me the call. You know, so she's got triple negative Nottingham grade 3 breast cancer, which is super aggressive. And so we jumped right in full with chemo. We got chemo this Friday. But in the meantime, this spiritual core stuff is actually very real to us. It's where the rubber meets the road at the end of the day. And so for us, it's really how we connect it to the transcend, the higher, a higher power, to God. And then how do we treat each other as a result of this, what we're calling an adventure that we go through? Well, it's that vertical spirituality for us, is that purpose, that meaning, that value type of stuff that we're saying we want to develop it. And we have found that it's been a delight to partner with CliftonStrengths and Gallup to be able to be the ones that roll this stuff out for the military through the chaplain corps and with the psych departments that are through the military. But we count it a privilege to be able to jump in with Dr. Koenig and Duke. I mean, we were like, wanted to do it. So we're right at time for questions, and we're going to be quiet. And at a minimum, you won't have to go to therapy today because you had a chance to just had a little overwhelming experience. Go ahead. Glenn Shorty's got a hand up, and unmute yourself and go for it. I can't hear you right now, and we want to hear you.
John, it's good to see you again. I'm so glad that you and Harold are partnering in raising spirituality in the military. So I loved your metaphors, the uncut gem and the crude oil. It reminded me when I used to play basketball with the older kids in the neighborhood, and they called me the uncut gem of the basketball world. And even though that was a tease, it was kind of an inspiration to me. But here's my question. I remember sitting on a DoD meeting with people. The subject was suicide prevention and resilience building, and there were tons of chaplains there. And I'm guessing this was 25 years ago, and the chaplain, the fellows who were leading it, mostly employees of DoD, said, well, we can't mention God because that would invite pushback. And the chaplains were just sitting there going, well, how does it work then if you can't even mention God? So I'm wondering, in the 25 years, are you finding that there's more acceptance of mentioning God and things spiritual, where God or a higher power is essential to that?
Yeah, I think
we know about the research.
I do, and I like that question. Yeah, I think that almost everywhere that we go, we're probably be showing it again when Doc Koenig and I are at. We're going to be at Buckley Space Force Base out in Colorado, and I'm looking at Dr. I think it's Casso. Well, I love it. I love that you got the galaxy there. It just warms my heart. But in the meantime, we're going to be at Buckley Space Force Base, and I think that Space Base Delta 4. When I first started working with them, like 2 years ago, they had 2 Delta bases, Delta 1 and Delta 2. I think they're up to like 20 now. But anyway, the reason I give you that, Glenn, is because we're going to be out there and we're going to be working the last week in July, last week in August. And we're probably going to actually show them Lisa Miller's one of her video on developing the core, because what she did was about 5 years ago when you're talking about the surgeon for the military, and the different services, as well as the chief chaplains. They start working on Lisa, and Lisa talks about whether it's it could be higher power, it could be the universe, it could be the transcendent. But if it's God, if it's God, Allah, Hashem, whatever the language that you use for higher power or transcendent, is the point is that there is something beyond ourselves. And so we are, though, in a time where right now, at least, language that is being used is that the SBNR was big when you were working with Harold and I were there at down at SOCOM, spiritual but not religious. And so at the end of the day, we know there are many people that have non-religious constructs. And so we're going to do a dive, Doc and I, in last week in July, where we look at, is it, and you guys are probably can look at my hands, if you're looking at, is it spirituality and religion? Are they like side by side? Are they overlapped? Is spirituality inside of religion? Is religion over spirituality? Is it none of the above? And so we're sensitive to all those. And that's the reason, at least for the chaplains, they say if anyone wears the nation's cloth, we're going to get to talking about purpose and inner, and so what's going on the inside of you. And it could be, and so yes, there is a little bit of renewed freedom that actually, when we first developed the spiritual fitness scale almost a decade ago, it was transcendent higher power. Now with some other tools that are out there, there is questions, even when you're looking at things like the moral injury scale, that Dr. Koenig and others have actually put together. That is an important question, is the God question, is like what that looks like, no matter how you define it. Even if the definition is no God, right? It's just that there's something outside of yourself. Doc, I see your hand, and I barely get my kids' names right, but I work really hard at it. But I know the last part of you is Nair. So go ahead, Doc.
Yes, thank you so much. You said it perfectly right. So I appreciate the conversation on this slide presentation. You really touch upon important, topics today. And I personally am someone with a near-death experience, which has been brought back with the CPR after being announced 2 minutes dead. So I've had a glimpse, to afterlife and the spiritual realm. And not being religious, but I've become more spiritual after coming back. So I just want to touch up on your point on bringing the difference between the vertical spirituality and horizontal spirituality. So, and also wanted to mention that with the research that I've read, and I'm working with the International Association of Near-Death Studies as well, I've seen that people who have had the NDE or other spiritual transformational experiences become less religion and more spiritual. And with my experience, I have all the respect for the religions, after my own experience, but I also know that spirituality and religion, as you mentioned, they may overlap, but spirituality is something much bigger than just religion. So.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because Doc, we kind of did a crude overlap, but then we also did all these little things that we're going to do when we train out, that it's like, because at least in our all the stuff we've done in the military, it's like, I think at one point there I couldn't put it all together, but there's 27 different configurations of what people do with this S and the R. Yolanda, go ahead. I see your hand up, and we can. I see your beautiful picture, but in the meantime, why don't you just talk away, unmute, and ask your question? Oh, there you are. Hey, good seeing you. Unmute. And I don't know. Can you unmute her, Doc? I don't know how to do that.
No, I can't do it.
So Yolanda, there's a little thing that says that there's on your thing. You got to hit a mute. Hang on. Ask to unmute. Yeah, there you go. You're great. Go ahead. Still can't hear you. Turn up your mic. You're doing good. Keep talking. I can't hear her. Doc, can you?
I can't hear her.
What you're saying is probably brilliant, so we don't want to miss it. If you put in the chat, if you put in the chat somehow, we could probably get the question.
Turn on your audio if you can turn it on. A lot of times people forget to turn on.
Yeah, on the bottom, if you hit your mute on the bottom, turn it on. You see it? You just go on the bottom of your Zoomy.
And then also turn on your speaker. You may have to turn it on your computer or
anything. Is it working?
Turn on your speakers.
Oh, we're so, yeah. I mean,
connecting to audio. That's a good sign.
That's good. Go ahead. Nothing. All right.
Speak.
Yeah, Veronica. I know she's working on it. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to come to in the chat about Lisa too. Yeah, walking up spiritual brain, part 1 and 2. Yeah, it's just yeah, you're Veronica Leon. You're absolutely spot on. It's good. People see that in the chat. Okay. All right. We're looking for another question. Yolanda, if you stick in the chat, Yolanda, we will see it and I will read your question. Anyone else got a question? Or a comment? We'll take those too. I mean, it's, we know that it's, okay. Yolanda, you want to jump right back in? You want to comment on spiritual core as it relates to discussion of suicide? 100%. Yolanda, you just unmute yourself. Oh, that's what she wanted to do. All right, so hang on. She wanted to in the chat. Yeah, so she wanted to comment on spiritual core. So if you give us our comment and put it in the chat thing, I know everybody will see it. We just know this, that the work that we've done for the last 15, well, Glenn's been at it almost 30 years and Doc's been at least 20. But we know this as we're talking about spiritual core and you're talking about suicide. A lot of stuff Doc and I will be doing at the end of the month is we're looking at not only the trauma spectrum, right, of trauma as moral injury fits into it, but we're looking at the moral continuum and how that works like. And so what we're making a call for in the military is something we're calling the pre of the spiritual core. So what we talk about is back in the day, at least when my dad was a Korean War era vet. There was just certain things that you got in the military that at least over the last 20 years that hasn't necessarily been the case, and I think part of it is if we talked about moral injury before it happens. If we talk about suicide before it happens, and we talk about spiritual core development and make that and so that's part of what we're doing. We're building for the Air Force, for the Chaplain Corps, and for the psychs. What we're trying to build for them is to say that when you come in the Air Force, you get an in-doc from everything. You get an in-doc on the hangar, from the commander, from the doc, from the surgeon, from the person who's going to be doing your outfit. We're saying you should have indoctrination from the Chaplain Corps. And in the Chaplain Corps, they should be talking about spiritual readiness in your spiritual core, moral injury, and also PTSD and suicide go there, and then ethical and moral decision-making. So that's basically the new thing. Yolanda, I'm looking, I think Ann's got a question. So Ann, why don't you jump up and I'm going to be looking at some of the other ones from DJ. Go ahead. Why don't you go, Ann?
Okay. This may be a bit off, but I think I wanted to ask anyway. I do a chaplain group on spirituality with teenagers, and I was wondering if you have any experience with these ideas, programs, what the spiritual core development for teenagers.
Oh yeah, yeah. So the way that at least our charge, the American Strength Centers, our focus is really on military families and vets and all that stuff. So in turn, even with the various forms in the Army Chaplain Corps, there's something called CRADO, the Navy does. It's called Chaplains Religious Education Development Opportunity. When they came back from Vietnam, it was basically when they were trying to help people transition. But that's CRADO is something that the Chaplain Corps owned. In the Air Force, called Strong Bonds, building strong bonds with family. In the Army, it's called building strong and ready teams. So a lot of stuff we do is not with teens exclusive, but we do it with families. So there's a version of Strengthening Your Spiritual Core. It's called Strength Discovery Encounter, where we do it with teens, and we help them with and families with spiritual core development. Again, using a lot of Lisa's work as well. And so I just know that even being on the call recently with our point person for the Navy that's working with Navy Installation Commands and with CRADO is families and teens are really, really big parts. So they're going to put a lot of energy to it. So yeah, but you can email us directly. I don't. Is my email even in the chat, Doc? I don't know. I mean,
I don't think your email is in the chat, but
I can probably do a chat and probably
if you can put it in there.
I'll put it in here, and you can email us directly, me directly. American Strength Center doing right now. We're looking for see if there's any other.com. There it is. So that's been put up there, and we pick up the name of the workbook. He showed, yeah. So I'm looking at that. It's called Strengthening Your Spiritual Core, and you can get that right on the American Strength Center website. It'll show you, and we could send you a PDF, the whole 9 yards.
Hi.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I think we're almost at time, Doc. Right? I know you have a hard stop.
How are you? Please call me Karen.
Karen, got it.
Hey, how are you today?
Good.
Not too bad. So, yeah, so I was confused as to when we were supposed to get together. Was it today at noon? Okay.
Yes, yes, it was today at noon.
Well, that's okay. I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Very good.
I didn't really write it down, and I was just completing an online seminar, and it's okay because
Okay, well, thank you, Karen. And if there are not any more questions, I'll give you about 5 seconds, 5 to 10 seconds to ask a question. If you don't, we will conclude this terrific seminar. I mean, J.E. is just such a great speaker. He's got so much knowledge to be able to share. We've been so blessed by his participation in this workshop, and I'm looking forward to working with him over the next couple of months. So, okay. So, if no questions, then thanks so much, J.E. And thank you for everyone who has been on the call today. We really appreciate your questions and your discussion. So take care and God bless.
Thank you. God bless. I will be contacting you, Mr. John.